Welcome.
Hey everyone.
Hey, welcome to the second episode of our Movements podcast of Becoming One. I'm here with James.
Hey everyone.
Hello, I'm Laura, and today we're talking about...
Salvation Army.
Yes, and this is a particularly important one to you.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I grew up in the Salvation Army. My mum and dad were Salvation Army ministers. I got ordained as a Salvation Army minister.
Yes.
Did my, training and all of that is there. My grandparents on my mum's side were Salvation Army ministers. My grandma on my dad's side actually grew up in a girls' home, a Salvation Army girls' home.
Okay.
Anyway, but I love the Salvos. Not with them anymore, obviously. But there's a lot, I guess, in the Salvation Army history that really appeals to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So I thought we'd do Salvation Army because
I
like talking about it. Yeah.
That sounds great. So the way this works is that James is teaching me here, just like he's teaching all of you out there. So I don't know a whole lot about the Salvation Army. I grew up in America, and as far as I knew, the Salvation Army was a thrift store, an op shop, and I know that sort of in our history books it says that the Salvation Army often did war relief historically, but I didn't know it was much of a denomination until I moved here. I didn't know that you could be, that denomination of Christian was Salvation Army. I didn't know it was actual church. So I've been here in Australia for quite a while, but I'm really looking forward to seeing from the inside what that looks like, what the Salvation Army does historically, what it's done throughout the ages, and what it means to you.
Well, I'll have to give you a bit of a history lesson then.
Please do then. Ready when you are.
Well, it was 1865.
Okay.
So the Salvation Army was started by William and Catherine Booth. And I guess they were part of like the Methodist movement beforehand and all that. And so I guess they had a holiness theology. If you think about John Wesley and the way he taught holiness, it was about being made perfect in love. So right on topic for us, like we've been talking about awakening to love, abiding in love, abounding in love. Love is really important in holiness theology because that's sort of the way that they boil down what is holiness. It's pure love. And so William Booth, he was an evangelist going around all over the place, preaching the gospel, causing a bit of a ruckus and all that with the converts that he was leading to the Lord. And the church that he was working with, they didn't like his sort of evangelistic ministry, and they wanted to chuck him in a church and give him like a tiny little circuit for him to sort of preach around, but very, very much based like just in church land. And the story goes that as he's having this meeting where the people are, telling him what they want him to do, his wife Catherine is up in the balcony listening in, and she yells out, "Never!" sort of thing. And so he didn't do that. And they came across this group called the Christian Mission, which was really just a missions group. And so made up of people from all different denominations who had a real heart for the poor and sharing the gospel with some of the poorest of the poor. And so the Christian Mission eventually turned into the Salvation Army. And so it was started in England. And again, just this poverty and I guess darkness was sort of sweeping across England. Lots of people who were drunk and, abusing alcohol. You can imagine what that does to family life and to marriages, to people, kids going missing. Like there's all this sort of stuff going on. And William and Catherine decided to start preaching the gospel to the poorest of the poor. Yeah. So that's how it started.
Yes.
And I guess it just grew from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Something I really admire about the Salvation Army Church, as I understand it, is its outreach. It's practical outreach.
Yeah.
Not purely just going to preach the gospel, but their active community outreach through.
That's right.
Feeding clothing, anything they can.
Yeah.
To show the love of Christ practically.
Yes.
What's your experience with that?
Yeah.
And I find that this particular denomination, in my opinion, seems to excel at that
Yes.
sort of thing, raising money
Yes.
for various causes and things like that. So what's your experience with that sort of practical outreach with the
Yeah.
Salvos?
Yeah. No, great. So, firstly, as a missionary kid, I got to see the church in action in some of the poorest places in the world.
Yes.
And so when I was in Bangladesh, like living in extreme poverty, these people living in
Yes.
absolute extreme poverty. Some of the girls, if they were born to a family that was really poor and their family couldn't look after them, like girls, those who were blind, who were deaf, any sort of disabilities, they were simply just discarded
Sure.
because the family couldn't afford to
Yes.
feed them. With boys, sometimes they held on to them because they wanted to, they could put them to work.
Yes.
If the girls were put to work, I mean, you can sort of imagine the sort of work that they're put to. From a very young age, they could be in
Yes.
the sex work
Yep.
and all sorts of dreadful things. So you've got extreme poverty. You've got families who are just fighting for their life to sort of survive. And in the midst of that, I got to see the church in action. And so the church was doing, they had clinics, free clinics for people who were
Yes.
dying of, AIDS or malaria and all those sort of things. They had homes for the blind, for the deaf, for the girls who were all being discarded.
Yes.
They were doing a whole heap of work with prostitutes and trying to help them get out of prostitution. And so I got to see, we had like these, I guess, fancy shops in Bangladesh. This is like in the 90s. And so it's probably not fancy today. But at the time, it felt really fancy because everything was just sort of, wasn't like home.
How long were you in Bangladesh?
So we were there for three or so years.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, anyway, but these shops, the prostitutes, they would rescue them out of prostitution, and they would give them knock over our little plant.
Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
So they would save them out of prostitution and give them other jobs.
Okay.
And so one of the jobs was creating arts and crafts. And so they would then sell them overseas and, they would be able to make a wage and all that. So that's what I grew up with. I grew
Yes.
up seeing the Salvation Army serving the poor like
Yes.
that. But I also saw them preaching the gospel. And so I heard amazing stories of how, these pastors who had next to nothing were sharing the gospel and villagers coming to Christ.
Were they respected in the community?
Sometimes, yeah.
The ministers and the church
Yeah,
itself?
Yeah. But I mean, but as I think we always see throughout church history, there's moments where everyone loves the church when we're serving, but then they'll turn on us pretty quick when it comes to the gospel.
Sure.
And so it can be up and down, and it can depend on, I guess, what's happening. So, for example, in one village, the whole entire Hindu village converted to Christ, and that upsets people. I know, like, I grew up knowing that there was like secret police or, the police
Yes.
were watching us because mum and dad were white and that sort of thing. So, so it was, up and down. There was persecution. And I think, and that actually is, I guess, the story of the Salvation Army, is that they share the gospel, they do these good deeds, but then they were ridiculously persecuted. So, for example, in the early days, so Salvation Army, I'm going to tell you a big story here.
Please
all right?
do.
So
Please
the
do.
uniforms, right? A lot of people
Yes.
say, why do they wear uniforms? Like, why do they run
Yep.
around and have
Yep.
brass bands and all
Yes.
that?
Yes.
So part of it goes back to this guy. His name was Elijah Cadman. And he was a bit of an evangelist. And he joined the Salvation Army. And he had this idea. I think there was a war about to break out. Don't ask me which one or when it was. But there was like a war that was about to break out. And so he was a marketing genius.
Yeah.
And so he designed like these Salvo uniforms. And in his marketing, he was like, this Sunday afternoon, we're going to declare war on the enemy. And, it's sort of like this sort of thing. And
Sure.
he got 3,000 people into his meeting
Okay.
where he preached the gospel. And a whole bunch of people got saved. A whole bunch of people got healed. And so for him, he used the salvation, like the army metaphor
yes.
as a marketing thing.
Sure.
As a way to sort of grab people's attention. So that's how the Salvos started. They
Yep.
started by trying to grab people's attention.
Yep.
Brass bands was pub music.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had pub bands that would go and play in pubs,
Mm-hmm.
but then they would change the, the words, and they would use hymns, but
Okay.
use pub music
Sure.
and do all that. And so they were planting churches in pubs and
It's-
in like these meeting places.
It's just another way to reach people where they're at, isn't it? That
Exactly.
just seems like the name of
Yes.
the church is just go out
Yeah.
to where these starving people need food. You go bring them
That's
food
right.
and the
Yeah.
gospel. They need clothes.
Yeah.
Bring them
Yeah.
clothes and the gospel.
Exactly.
They're in the pub. Go to the pub.
Go to the pub.
Give them the gospel.
And that's what they did.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then like the brass bands, brass bands are great at drawing a crowd.
Yes.
And so you can imagine like when brass bands were like popular,
Yeah.
that it really drew a crowd.
Yeah.
So when they went down, they would march down streets and they would do like open air preaching. People would come down the front and they would lay down like the big bass drum, you know, like the boom,
Yep.
boom, boom sort of drum. They would lay it on its side and that would become like the altar where people would come, kneel down at the bass
Amazing.
drum and give their life to the Lord.
Amazing.
And the sort of things that they would see were like these people who were, you know, alcoholics, full of anger and rage or whatever it was, and they'd get up just a completely new person. Like God completely transformed them. And so this really attracting attention or grabbing people's attention before sharing the gospel was a big piece of it.
Yep.
One of my favourite stories is a guy called Joe the Turk, just because it's a cool name, cool
sure,
nickname.
Sure.
But he used to, he had this truck sort of thing that he would sort of drive. Then he'd push a button. He'd get into like the middle of a street, a busy street. He'd push a button and the sides would fall down. And then everyone would come around to try and help pick up the mess. And then he'd climb up on top of his truck and preach the gospel. Like it was just like other times they would have like a funeral procession.
Yeah.
And they'd carry like a casket sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then someone would jump out and preach about, and would talk about like this new life in Christ. Like they were very good at and so like they were entertaining.
Yes.
And and other churches.
Again, that meets people where they're at, right?
Meeting people where they're at. It's grabbing their attention.
so
It's
good.
fun. It's exciting.
That's so good.
But the normal churches hated it.
I bet.
They absolutely
bet.
hated it. They couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't cope.
I bet.
And you can sort of imagine it like today. Like you sort of might see some clips on YouTube or whatever of some of these mega churches
Yeah,
doing
sure.
wild, wacky things.
Sure.
And I guess in a similar way, that's what they were doing back then. They were doing anything they could to grab people's attention.
Sure.
And I actually think that's something clever because a lot of people, they're not, especially now, we're not really thinking about religious things. We're not thinking about spiritual things. We're not thinking about God. So what they wanted to do was wake people up.
Sure.
And so I guess that you'd see on their uniforms there's this S and S. So it means save to save, we just spoke about. And so there was this really big understanding that, you would once you got saved, then you get trained up to lead other people to the Lord. And that's how the army grew. But then it also meant save to serve. And so not only were they really passionate about leading the lost to Jesus, but it was actually, like you said before, demonstrating the love of God in very, very practical ways.
Yep. Where does
Yeah.
the name Salvation Army come from? Do you know? Do you know how that, or where it started? What country did we start
again,
in?
it was like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
Again, in London.
Yes.
So
Oh,
it was
London.
the Christian
Yes, that's
mission.
right. Okay.
And I think it was a marketing thing, and they said, we are a Salvation Army. And then someone's like, oh, that's a cool name. And so I think it was like I'm not sure if it was like a flyer or something like that for a meeting that they were doing.
Yep.
I'd have to double check that. But it was something along those lines, and they sort of stumbled upon that name. And then it just stuck because early Salvation Army, it was just pure revival. Like they made such a huge impact in the world in a very short period of time. And so like now, they're in 134 countries, just under 2 million soldiers, which would be, a soldier is not just a believer or a member of the church. A soldier is someone who is signed up.
Sure.
Like signed up and made a
Specifically,
promise
yep.
that I'm going to live my life
Okay.
for the salvation of the world and the glory of God, is how we'd say it. So that's a lot of people. These days, they're caring for around 13 to 14 million people every year through care and those things that you were talking about.
Yep.
And they've got a real history of not just caring for the poor, but also standing for justice. And so one example would be, again, in London, there used to be, what was it called? I think it was like yellow phosphorus. I think it was yellow. I might be getting the colour wrong here.
Okay.
There was matchsticks. And the way that they made matchsticks was these poor people would get the phosphorus with their hands or whatever, and they would put it on the matchsticks, and that's how they made the matchsticks.
Okay.
So matchsticks factory. But the problem with this, I think it was yellow phosphorus, was that it would get into their jaw, and their jaw would glow.
Oh,
Like it would glow in the dark.
it's not healthy.
And like, yeah, ultimately it would kill them and all that sort of thing. So it was poisonous for the people who were making them.
Or these very poor people making them, correct?
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
probably treated as
So who cares?
discarded,
exactly.
disposable,
Exactly.
make us our matchsticks.
Yeah. And so the Salvos, what they did, they were really clever, and they created new matches. Guess what colour their matches were?
Red.
Red. And so the reason why the world has matchsticks with the red bit on top was because of the Salvation Army.
Wow, okay.
Because they cared about the poor, and so they started a new factory, which was, I don't know, better for humans.
Yeah.
And then it took over the whole matchstick industry. It became, that's what you had, the way that you had to do it from then. And then they sold it. They sold that business, which probably would have made them a lot of money, but they sold it because they weren't in it for the money.
Sure.
They were in it to make
For the justice. To keep these people. So I'm familiar with, obviously, the Salvation Army op shop in the church, which is all very Australian. Worldwide, like you've told us, you mentioned there was a home for girls. What else is the Salvation Army? Where have they spread around the world? Into what various things that maybe people don't know are Salvation Army related? I mean, are there other,
I've got to tell you one
programs?
invention that I think was one of the best inventions ever.
Yes.
And you almost went there before.
Okay.
In the World Wars, the Salvation Army, I guess their people were known for going to war with the soldiers. And instead of fighting the physical war, they would fight, I guess, in the spiritual. And so they would care for soldiers on both teams.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they would, there'd be
So
soldiers.
they weren't for a side, they were for people.
No, they were just for people.
Okay.
They were just there to care for people. And so I remember talking to this one army guy, and he was talking about on the Kokoda track. And they were on the Kokoda track, and, and he was saying that, they came around a corner and they heard this clinging and clattering, and they thought, oh, it's the enemy. And so they thought they were going to, had their weapons drawn, ready to fight. And it was a couple of salvos there making tea and coffee for everyone. And they were like, how on earth are they, like, it was on the Kokoda, I think it was on the Kokoda Trail, PNG or somewhere like that. And, but the salvos were right at the front lines, serving people. Anyway, these women it was in Europe somewhere, they started making food for the soldiers, but they had very limited supplies. And so they invented, wait for it, donuts. They invented donuts. Yeah. So thank God for the salvos, because I love my donuts.
Same.
But they made donuts because they were easy to make.
Fantastic.
So they made donuts. Okay, other things that they do, obviously, lots of drug and alcohol rehab centres. Okay. They do counselling. They do financial counselling. Yes. I've been involved in like drop-in centres, where they open up a space for poor people to come in, and they just love on them. They help connect them to services that they need. They just offer them friendship. They offer Jesus to them. They pray with them and they love them. And so you can find all sorts of different types of expressions all around the world. And I think I said before, it's over 100, I think it's up to 134 countries now. And so they continue to grow, particularly through places like Africa. And I sort of think this, the military language probably doesn't work as well here in the West anymore. And I don't think brass bands are,
Love a
it's
good
not
brass
quite
band.
pub music anymore, like it. So it doesn't have that same
Sure.
appeal as what it used to.
Sure.
But in some parts of the world, it continues to. Um,
Where does funding come for all of this as well? Do you know? How do they?
There's a mixture. There's a
Okay.
mixture. So one thing that's really cool is that every year they'll get all the churches to give up 1 week's salary and give it to missions.
Love that.
A week's
I love that.
a 1 week's salary, and if people could
didn't know
give
that.
more, they would ask them to give more.
Yep.
So that's the first place, and then they partner. They partner with other organisations and governments. Like here in Australia, they partner with the government and all that. And I think that can go both ways. It's fantastic that they can offer so much care to more people, but sometimes you can't preach the gospel
Sure.
when you're doing that.
You mean if the government's tied in, there might be
Yeah.
limitations with that?
That's right.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. And I would say, like, in the early days, the solution to alcoholism, the solution to all these different problems was Jesus. Whereas now it's probably a bit more, I guess there's counselling and there's,
Sure.
and all these
Sure.
things which are good, and I'm not knocking those things,
Yes.
but Jesus used to be the thing that you would give them, Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
But what I would say is that as we read the Gospels, Jesus makes it very, very clear that whatever we do to the least of these, we do to him.
Yes.
And the Salvos take that seriously.
They really do. That's what I was just going to say. That's what I see the Salvos doing. That's what I see them do their best.
Yeah.
Work with.
Yeah.
It seems like they take that very seriously.
Yeah.
And that's their whole motto is go out, meet them, meet
Yeah.
needs, and then explain what the greater need is.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
I mean, your
that's right.
immediate need is food,
Yeah.
clothes, shelter, housing, whatever.
Yep.
But there's a greater need, and we
Yes.
also have this for you too, right?
Definitely. Yeah. And so I think that when you see the Salvos operating at their best, it's when they are sharing the gospel with love, in all those practical ways, but they're also sharing the gospel, with
Sure.
the words and inviting people to come and know Christ. And so, obviously, there's pockets in Australia and all around the world
Yes.
where it's going great and places
Yes.
where it's not going so great. But I love, so let me give you a bit of a summary of the things that I
Yes.
that I
Great.
love. So number one, I love their holiness theology, where holiness looks like love. I think that's beautiful.
Yes.
I love their attractional model of evangelism, not in the sense of, hey, come to us,
They're not luring anybody in.
not
They're
luring anyone
going-
in, but it like opens their
Yes.
eyes. They're like, whoa, what are you
Yes,
doing?
yes.
Like I love that.
Yes.
I love that. They're finding creative ways to connect with people.
Yes.
I love that.
That's right. It has a negative connotation when you sounds like you have an agenda. You just want people,
Yeah.
but it seems different than that.
Yeah,
It seems like
'cause-
they've got something they really want to share, and they're
Yes.
finding creative ways to do it.
Yeah. So I just love the creativity. I love that aggressive evangelism, not in the sense of like, because they weren't mean-spirited
No,
or anything
of
like
course
that, but aggressive in the sense of, they had a very clear mission that they wanted to see the whole world come to know Jesus. And so they would do whatever it took to do that. So I love that.
Yep.
I love that. Just that real passionate evangelism. I love, again, priesthood of all believers. I think we mentioned that on our last podcast around disciple-making movements. Really big that everyone has a part to play.
Yep.
Salvos are the same, even though they go to some of the darkest, poorest places in the world.
Yep.
They still have that. I love that they care for the poor, both in practical ways, but also in caring about justice.
Yes.
Not
That's
just,
important too.
the systems that actually create it, like the factory
Yep.
or the matchstick industry, really, back in the day. They continue to challenge those things. And like I remember years ago when I was in Bible college that we did these big rallies with an organisation called Stop the Traffic. And the Salvos were huge in it. And it was because a lot of our chocolate was made by slaves.
Okay.
And because of these worldwide protests, they changed where people sourced their cocoa from so that we weren't just buying
So you're
slave-traded.
supporting the slave trade.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I love that. And I also love how they just had incredible examples of miracles and the Holy Spirit was moving and, anyway, I think there's a lot that we can learn from them. So what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd just end with one more story.
Great.
And this guy, his name was Booth Tucker, and Frederick Booth Tucker.
Okay.
And he went over to India, and he wanted to share the gospel with everyone in India. And so he took what Paul said really seriously, that I become all things to all people so that I might win some. And so he dressed up like a guru and he went walking barefoot to go and share the gospel, and no one listened to him.
Interesting.
One afternoon he fell asleep under a tree after walking, and these locals came by and they saw his feet that were all bloodied and cut because he'd been, he was some rich pommy guy and he'd come to India to share the gospel, and here he is walking barefoot trying to connect with the local culture. And these local guys saw his feet as he slept, and they all gathered around him. And when he woke up, they said, "Hey, we want to know what you want to share with us." Because they recognized that he was suffering, like he was putting himself out to be able to bring something to them.
He obviously meant
Exactly.
it. He was willing to.
Yeah. And so I think he often said that this was, the best sermon he ever preached was with his eyes shut, or something like that. I can't remember. Yeah, Okay. And so, but I love that because to me, that is a great demonstration of love in action.
Yep.
It cost him dearly. He was not in England anymore. He was in India.
Yep.
He wasn't wearing clothes that he wanted to wear. He wasn't wearing shoes that would have been far more comfortable and practical, but he put himself out so that he could reach others. And it was that love in action that led to a whole bunch of people coming to know the Lord. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from that.
I think so. I think that feels like the Salvation Army motto is just love in action.
Yeah.
Going out, meeting them where they're at, loving them wholeheartedly. So that was really great. Thank you, James.
Awesome.
I learned heaps from that, and I appreciate you taking the time to explain all that. So with this is episode number 2. We've got a few more to go. What are some of the next ones that we'll be talking about in the next few episodes?
That's a great question. There's so many to look at. I wonder whether we'll look at, we might have a look at China to see what God's doing in China. And maybe we might throw Iran in there at the same time. And they're just examples of where the gospel is spreading when the conditions don't seem right. There's heavy persecution. You're not allowed to be doing it. You have to be quiet. But also the style of church looks quite different. So we might look at them. But there's lots of other movements that we'll look at as we go along. I love the Moravian movement and how they started with 24/7 prayer. They prayed for 100 years and ended up being an incredible mission-sending church. I think that's a great, that would be a great one for us to look at. And there's some other revivals and movements around as well. So stay tuned. We'll see which one we end up with next week.
That's good. But there's more to come.
There's lots more to come.
So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.